got a note sheet to pull from.
We do. We are live now. When you said let's do it, sorry,
Let's
I
do it.
didn't know.
I tend to do that. Let's roll, bro. All right.
Because we were live, I didn't want the uncensored version out there.
Yeah, just
I'll tweet it out here.
some play-by-play as we make our way through the Nolecast
That's a
note
little
sheet.
premature. Premature hitting of the live button. So you guys will get to see us put the show together here in real time. I just got back from a workout. I'm here in Charlotte. It is 2 canceled flights and 3 missed connections for me this week. So it has been. I don't think I've had like 1 canceled flight in my lifetime. So this is basically all of the stuff possible rolled into 1 week, man. It's been a really good week of travel.
Yeah,
Notification
air
down.
travel's something else right now. It really is.
Dude, Charlotte is an absolute terrible airport right now. And I'm not saying like I hate the town, but I really do hate the airport right now. I didn't get my bag till like 2 a.m. It's great. I'm playing Diamond Creek in a couple weeks, and I'm gonna fly into Raleigh and drive the extra 45 minutes just to avoid this crap. So
yeah, Raleigh's a nice little airport that I'm
Raleigh
very
is a
familiar
nice
with
airport,
over
dude.
my time.
Let's do it. You know what sucks with the new tweet deck is I can't tweet out stuff from the Nolecast account unless I load it up. So this is truly going to be a notification gang only morning. All right, solid.
Let's get started here. Cool.
Let's do this thing.
Ingram
So we're at
Smith,
ACC Media Days. Yeah,
Bud
sorry.
Elliott
All right.
are at ACC Media Days. They're going to attempt to start a podcast. Most of this is my response or my doings. So Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode. I'm in Atlanta. Bud's at ACC Media Days. Interested to hear some of your perspective up there, Bud, as to what you've seen so far and what you think you might see play out today. It's a rare anticipated ACC Media Days in my perspective. It's the radio station that I used to work with, the one that we first connected through, doesn't even send they send a guy who doesn't do a show up to cover ACC Media Days. So it's become interesting to see what's happened. But nonetheless, you've got a commissioner who's did not necessarily make the strongest of points last year and really came off as meek and not maybe the new strong voice in the room that you would want it to be from a conference perspective. Nothing has changed to give him some instant surge of confidence, but I'll be interested to see how he manages that. And then, Northwestern athletics in general are one of the larger, hot spots in college athletics. I doubt we'll get a whole lot of clarity on that, but it will be interesting to see if Phillips decides to touch one of the hot buttons in college athletics right now. So this will be the Nolecast. It will be mentioned and consumed kind of through the prism of ACC Media Days, but we've got a bunch of other stuff to talk about as far as specific team information to Florida State. And Bud, let's just jump into it, and excited to get another Nolecast started.
Good to be back for sure. So my thought here, because we have the commissioners forum in about 2.5 hours here. It's 7-ish. I was working on my notes before we got on this for what I'm going to ask at ACC Media Day. And I'm curious, like, what the ACC will do with Jim Phillips. Like, will they have Amy Acola, their ACC spokesperson, get up there and say, "Hey, Jim's not going to answer any questions about Northwestern because he was named in one of the lawsuits." So basically, just hey, I can't comment on this due to pending litigation. Now, I think that's the obvious way out. In some ways, being named in the suit might be a short-term blessing for him because it gives him like legal cover to say, "Hey, I can't talk about any of this stuff." However, he was so forceful in his denial of knowledge, right, about this stuff, which you can argue like, I didn't know anything about the potential hazing during multiple programs during my tenure. And I have no idea what Jim Phillips knew or did not know. And I'm not trying to accuse him of anything. But you see what I'm saying here? It's not a great look to open with that. And then I'm not really sure what else he's going to discuss when he gets up there. Probably, hey, all these ACC teams have. Is it bright enough I can wear my hat forward now? Yeah, okay. Lights coming in. All these ACC teams that are not football won a championship. We now have games on the CW. He'll probably talk about conference stability. It maybe try to have some juxtaposition against the Big 12 and the Pac 12, which I just left out there on the West Coast, where their commissioner did not do a great job of easing people's concerns about the league. Although I think none of the Pac 12 teams are going anywhere based on my read right now. Certainly could change. What is there anything Phillips that could say that would make you make your ears perk up here?
I'm just interested as to the level of honesty that he brings to the situation. I don't think anybody thought Jim Phillips was going to jump in this position and he was going to, go into some type of movie montage setting and 5 days later emerge with a out of the grant of rights and a TV contract that was going to pay the ACC institutions $82 million a year, and everybody was going to be right on par with this with with the SECs and Big Tens of the world. But I don't think people necessarily thought that he was going to display a naivety to college athletics and talk about gated communities and how we're all living in the same neighborhood and whatever that nonsense was. So I will be interesting to see if his perspective on that has changed at all. We have a listener question here that asked us that August 15th was mentioned numerous times in a previous podcast. What's the significance of that? So look, August 15th is a date to which you have to file with the ACC if you're going to leave. Sometime, and that may be significant, it may not be. It's just something to keep an eye on. We particularly waited last year until we jumped into the subject of conference expansion until after that date, because we knew that there was basically a 0% chance anything was going to occur that year, and that was a specific date and time. But again, if you're going to leave the conference and challenge the grant of rights and everything else, I don't know that you necessarily adhere to the proper date of leaving either. So just something to keep an eye on.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, knocked my microphone out there. Apologies. So yeah, man, I'll be interested to see what your thoughts are from the ground. And I've been at that thing before when there was an anticipated comments from the conference commissioner, and it's been 2 or 3 minutes into it, and you can tell, hey, this is interesting. This is going to make national headlines. And when you've been 2 or 3 minutes into it, and you can tell, hey, this guy's not going to say anything about anything. I'll be curious as to what your experience is and what it looks like somewhere around 9 o'clock this morning, bud.
I will be bringing my laptop and be listening, and I'll probably ask a question or two. And I actually tried to ask a question of almost every coach in the Pac-12 because it was being live streamed on Pac-12 Network, which, I mean, all 12 people who watched that. And I was like, hey, Bud Elliott of the Cover 3 podcast, and people are like, hey, I heard about your podcast on the Pac-12 Network. I was like, see, look at that. So going to Pac-12 paid for itself. Well, I mean, obviously going to Vegas paid for itself. But yeah, it was I'll have my laptop. I need to work. I run our podcast network. So if Phillips goes into just boring drone on lacrosse mode, I will be working on our network podcast analytics report that I do every week for Odyssey. CBS has a deal with Odyssey. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Okay, so last night we got in. Most of the media was around there, and or at least a decent bit, and some SIDs and a couple coaches, and people were asking me some Florida State questions. And I think the most common one was, do you buy Florida State this year? And my response to that is, at what price? Right? What am I buying with Florida State? Do I buy that they're a national champion quality team? Not really. I have a hard time seeing that. I'm not saying it's totally impossible, right? But it would require a lot of dudes who already played well stepping up and playing like absolute superstars. I said, what price? So the one guy said, as like the second best team in the ACC. I said, yeah. I if they don't play as one of the top two teams in the ACC, I'd be pretty disappointed. I think, right? Given the level of experience. Another guy said, as the conference favorite. I said, I think so. Like I think they're really kind of right there with Clemson, and that's an interesting talking point, I think, and jumping off point for us. The different perceptions of FSU within the league. Like to me, I was a little taken back. Like, do you buy them as the second best team in the ACC? Like pretty sure they were last year. Just that they played in the same division as Clemson. They're not worse than last year, certainly on paper. I think they're considerably better. Why would I not buy them as that? It was kind of surprised me that question, was asked of me there. So, I mean, is there any reason? Like, does that surprise you that they would be like, do you buy them as the second best team in the ACC? Like, yeah, all day, right?
Yeah, I think people just have a lagging knowledge sometimes of various parts of football, and they're not aware. Maybe it's exactly as where Florida State is, or maybe it's just a general skepticism as to whether or not there's not going to be some kind of fallback to the mean line that's been driven over the last 5 years or so as to what this program is talent wise. I mean, it's certainly one of the two most talented teams in the conference, and it's probably one of the anywhere from 4 to 10 most talented teams in the country, depending on what you particularly like in a college football roster. So yeah, it's talented. Talent's there.
Yeah. So I was like,
Returning
okay, yeah.
experience is there. I mean, these aren't two guys or a fan base overall that's convinced itself that all of a sudden they've turned into world beaters because they've lifted harder and become a better team, and there's more
They're
collective
tighter.
buy-in
They're
this
so much
year.
tighter.
They're tighter. Yeah, exactly. No, this is a really damn good roster. That probably is those things that I'm not making fun of the idea that that's the case for Florida State. I'm just making fun of the case that is kind of general college football fans response in the months of June and July as to why their guys are going to be better, and they're going to maybe win a game and a half or two games more than the broader college football world thinks they might.
Completely. So yeah, I was like, I definitely buy them at a minimum as a top two team in the ACC, and think they will have a legitimate shot to win the ACC, which kind of got us into discussing like who are you going to put on your all ACC ballot, right? I'm going to put Drake May as my quarterback. There's a chance he goes first overall in the draft. Probably have Jordan too, right? Like, I don't think it's inconceivable that some guys could finish ahead of him, but like given his track record and given the year that I expect him to have, I'm not going to put anybody else above Jordan there. I might put two FSU receivers on the All ACC team. Like, I know Johnny's drop rate, but I expect Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson to eat. And I'm definitely putting Keon. Oh, did you see Dane Brugler's rating on Keon Coleman? By the way, I think we talked about this off air. I don't know if we've potted since. Dane Brugler's the guy for the Athletic. I track this early mock draft stuff. They're almost all terrible this far out. But Dane Brugler actually has an okay track record, right? He has Keon Coleman as the number 4 receiver in the draft.
We did talk about this. Yeah.
That's pretty nice, man. Like, if Keon Coleman is legitimately your number 1 and Johnny Wilson's your 2, that's a matchup problem. We talked to some people last night, like they're gonna be tough to defend, because they got the Bell kid too. They were talking about like from South Carolina, and that is a problem, matching up wise. And I was like, look, and I think they feel great about their running back room despite losing Trayshawn Ward to Kansas State. They got some nice depth there, and Jordan's legs, and kind of slowly the conversation was building. Oh, okay, yeah, they're going to be a real problem. It's like they were good last year, right? Like, I mean, there's some fakery to it in terms of like some of the teams they played kind of quit, but like they made them quit, right? The offense I feel like was a lot less faking the numbers than the defense was. I mean, like with defense, you can make a legitimate argument they played a bunch of hurt backups at quarterback, and like that kind of matters. But offensively, like they made those defenses look just as bad as they were, and in some cases, much worse than they had looked all year. Like nobody really did that at Syracuse. Well, they just sunned them. It was do the get down thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I really do think with how good, because we know this staff, especially on offense, is a good coaching staff. And we'll talk about some of the recruiting stuff in a minute. I do think that they have really high chances this year. Do any of these? I think you may have a couple offensive linemen make like a first or second team All ACC. I mean, Dimitri made it last year, right? I don't know if he was first team, but he was definitely on one of the All ACC teams. Like Maurice Smith's a pretty known name. I could see him making it. I could see somebody picking like a Robert Scott or a Washington just because of their known names. And yet, I'm not even sure those guys are going to be in the conversation for some of your best linemen this year. Like, there's a chance and if that's the case, like, if you got guys who are making the All ACC team who are not your best players, I think that really is just confirmation of what we've been saying on the show. Like, you have really quality depth. It's the Brewers argument. Do you have a bunch of superstars? Sorry if you got kids in the car. Do you have a bunch of superstars? Maybe not. You got a lot of really good players, and then you got very few players who are just weaknesses. And on the O-line, like that's a weak link system. O-line's not get a stud and 4 scrubs. It's
right. Yeah.
You're basically as good as your worst player. And I think that Atkins has raised the floor of that room.
Look, there's reasons of strength and optimism at every place you look on the roster. Now you can find areas where you're concerned, and sure, if you have an injury at defensive end, that could be tough or other things. But there are legitimate guys at everywhere on this roster, and offensive line is just one of the few places that you can look at and go, I mean, hey, look, what if Bless Harris isn't as good as I think he could be? You're going to be fine. You got 3 other people that can play tackle. I mean, it's just the amount of guys that they've got there, and very much a weak link system, as you just referenced, and they got a ton of really solid links. Excited to see what that offensive line looks like, and do think that there's guys. I'm not trying to gas somebody up, but I like Bless Harris could surprise an awful lot of people this year with how good of a player he is. So they're the turnaround there. I mean, I don't know. We haven't come up with the right term, but Alex Akian, there will be some kind of historical reference here that we're making in 8 years as to, hey, can this guy pull off an Alex Atkins and totally turn a position group around in 2 or 3 years? This is, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but this doesn't happen frequently. We will remember what has happened at this position in particular for a long damn time, and I can't wait to see what this year's unit looks like.
No doubt about it. Other guys that we will be voting on the All ACC team, definitely Burse. I think Lovett will have a chance. I don't think Pat Payton will get a ton of preseason ACC love, but he was the rookie of the year, so maybe he will get like on a second team. I forgot how many guys they make us vote for. The SEC, you vote for an insane number of guys. Linebacker, I could see a Deloach getting getting some preseason love. So a lot of this from the media is preseason. It's just name recognition, right? But he certainly could make it preseason. I don't know about Bethune, maybe. Fentrell Cypress, almost certainly. Renardo, I think could, right?
Yeah.
And probably should, but definitely could, is because he didn't have a million picks last year. The one that maybe I think will make people pissed off is Keon, because I think his numbers were suppressed a little bit last year playing in that Michigan State offense, and the fact that he's a transfer, I'm not really sure how many people within the ACC will vote for him, but I I think they should. And there's definitely an argument that he's the best receiver in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Cephas kid or excuse me, the Walker, Devontae Walker at North Carolina, I think is probably also in this. I mean, he tore up Georgia last year for Kent State, and in talking to some staffs that played at Kent State, they're like, yeah, this kid's way better than the MAC league. And then he also tore up Spring for UNC. But this brings me to some Clemson talk, and I did want to thank the legendary team, 844 FSU Loan. That's 844 FSU Loan. Over 500 Nolecast listeners have gotten loans to these guys, and you guys should too if you are in the market for a home. I've done it twice. Graham's working on a new project with these dudes. They do an absolutely fantastic job. Going to get you the best possible rate. Customer service is off the charts, and you know, like we turn down some sponsorships, guys. Like we try to only bring you stuff that we actually believe in and use, and like, these guys have always done us right. So 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. There were some Clemson guys there last night, which was interesting because Clemson doesn't talk until the final day. The ACC has smartly spaced this out. Commissioner day 1, FSU day 2, Clemson day 3. So you really got to kind of give the network some content each day, as opposed to having a day where like the headliner is like a pit.
Clemson also does their own media day, like the day before they leave for ACC Media Day, don't they? They do like an own internal thing. So
Yeah,
and they just do things a little differently there. So
they do orange overalls and all. There's a little bit less. ACC Media Day used to be dope, man. Like you would get to play golf at Pinehurst with like Frank Beamer, just randomly paired up. It was cool, and I think what changed it honestly was probably seeing how some of the leagues are so corporate and doing it like the SEC, but also the Jameis year. Like they put in different protocols that year, and I think I think that kind of changed it
yeah.
a little bit, and they didn't go back. But it's still very open. Like you can grab a Pat Narduzzi for 10 minutes and just chat him up in the hallway if you want to. At the SEC, you would get hit with a taser if you tried to do that, right? Pac-12 is good like that too. So Clemson talk, just because that's probably, I mean, I expect Clemson to be voted to win the league, I would think, because the game is at Clemson. I pose this question. Is it even a question who would be voted to win the league if Clemson had bothered to use the portal, right? If Dabo didn't have like 6 or 7 Johnny tryhards at the bottom of his roster? Like we talk about the importance of recruiting, but like they just sit out the portal. It reminds me of like when the Baltimore Orioles for like 5 or 6 years, like, you know what? We're not going to use the international market at all. We're just going to use the domestic draft only. And if you're only using that, you better be Georgia of last year, where your hit rate is ungodly good. Kirby Smart's like, no, we're good. No portal for us last year. And you know what? They won the national title by 8 touchdowns. So he was kind of justified in that. Clemson, I'm not so sure that they aren't making a mistake by refusing to use the portal. I know their culture and what they want to maintain, but that could be a leak in their game, dude.
I will say that I think that's changing. I have heard reason to believe that Clemson will be more active in the portal moving forward. I'll put it that way. So I think they've made a course correction. Now, people could be confused as to who's actually reaching out to them and stuff like that. And that happens all the time. But it does sound like Clemson may be making a pivot from prior decisions on this subject matter. But yeah, no, it's certainly, I mean, look, this is, juxtaposition is overused, but this is as clear a juxtaposition as to an approach of portal and, leaning into it as much as any staff in the country has. On one side, the gentlemen that happen to wear garnet and gold and orange and purple have stayed away from it. And it's certainly allowed Florida State and Mike Norvell to probably get to this point to where it's it may be seen as a coin flip by some. I agree with you. I think Tobacco Road Media is probably going to break 60-40, 65-35 in the direction of Clemson as far as who will be, the media's choice for ultimate winner. But I will be interested to see just the general conversation, Bud, that comes about at media day, just from a, a, a whole different landscape as far as scheduling this year, and the idea that the Atlantic and the coastal are not, this path that must be fought through, and see two people that emerge on the other side. It certainly came at a good year for the conference, if it does believe that it has two of, maybe the six or two of the better eight teams in the country, and letting those teams have a chance to play each other twice in a season.
Absolutely. In talking to some Clemson people, I kind of asked them that question. It's like, do you think it's a mistake for them not to use the portal? And they basically said, like, at what positions? And I was like, oh, okay, like we're just gonna go full homer on this, really? Like this roster is divine. There are no flaws in this thing. And I think they're like, no, like it's more just what spots do you think they should have? I was like, I think receiver, I think D end, and I think maybe offensive line. And the response I got was interesting. The guy was like, and I do trust this guy in Clemson. I know he has access to their practices, and he's like, I think they're actually much improved at receiver. That they needed some health and they needed the year for some of these young guys to grow up. I think this is probably the best Clemson O line, not since the 18 team, but since the 19 team. D end, I completely agree with you. He's like, yeah, they could have used a D end. And my counter was like, okay, but if Clemson gets Keon Coleman, it's kind of a wrap as to who will be voted number one in the preseason in the league. It doesn't mean that they will win. The voting doesn't always hold true, but you can't tell me that if they were playing in the same pool transfer wise, like the real high upside guys, that, that this wouldn't be a bigger gap if the gap exists at all, right? He's like, yeah, that's fair. But it was interesting to get his take on Clemson's strengths and weaknesses. Like maybe they're better on the O line than we realize. Maybe maybe they do have some young studs at receiver. Like they should by the recruiting numbers. Like the odds are that somebody emerges. They think that they have somebody emerging there. DN, I think they're pretty worried. Now they're going to be really damn good on the defensive interior. The Peter Woods kid, they think is going to play a lot, despite the fact they got 2 NFL draft pick, coming back. So on the Clemson recruiting front, by the way, as far as like them going to change and use the portal, they've had some pretty interesting recruiting losses lately, which might be a bit of a leading indicator as to how things are going there. They've missed on you're muted, by the way. They've missed on multiple offensive line targets lately. Now, look, so is FSU, right? They missed on Zandamela. They missed on Atite. So, it's not like we're not stones in glass houses here, but yeah, Clemson has missed on some guys that they kind of felt like they had to get. So maybe the course correction on using the portal is potentially related to that, and realizing they're going to have to fix some misses, which to me is the ideal use of the portal, right? You recruit most of your roster out of high school if your program's in a good spot, and you build through the portal for the spots that you need help with. And if there's a guy out there who can really help you, you go get him. But I thought that was kind of an interesting take by those guys.
Interesting to see evolution, and yes, sometimes an 0 for 2 or an 0 for 3 at a particular position will help you evolve as to what you think of the portal, and the role that it could play in your program. So interesting to see what that looks like. And Dabo loves holding court, and I'll be interested to see if he acknowledges, or what his comments tied to the portal are in the individual group one-offs there that they do. Let's see. Should we get to the all important subject of Daryl Jackson's waiver at this point, Bud?
I think like that's a question we're gonna have to ask of Mike Norvell at this event. I mean, it's the clock is ticking on this. We'll see if they get this approved, man. I don't know, but I do think like if you want to have the best possible season, you kind of need this to happen.
You most certainly need this to happen.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, an update will be provided when an update's provided. These things tend to do their own dance, and we'll see what the outcome is.
I don't know
But
if I want to put odds on this because I don't like. How do you handicap it,
mhm.
right? Like, I mean, we just be making stuff up. I think as far as odds
Yeah,
on that.
there certainly is some kind of at this point we've entered into a place to where you probably need to come back to this every 10 days, and you probably need to increase your odds by 2 to 3 to 5% each time you do, I mean, that's I don't think that's an outrageous way of looking at this. The longer this drags on, the more concerning it will be. It could be absolutely nothing, could be the NCAA is is not getting to a whole lot of things immediately. If you look nationally as to some of the stories, there's a situation out with Iowa wrestling and Iowa State wrestling that's been out there for 6 months. There are things that get addressed
Gambling thing.
immediately, and there's things that don't. So I'm sorry. Yeah,
It,
it's tied to gambling. Absolutely.
well, the gambling is gambling football too at Iowa State
Okay. Okay.
for sure. That's going to be an issue at a lot of schools, and it's not a gambling scandal, right? It's just some of these state laws really prohibit who can gamble and where, and like whatever casino it is, FanDuel, DraftKings, no free ads. They have the geolocation stuff. So if you are
Yeah.
making bets on the NBA and
Right.
you play at Iowa State on the football team, like, do we really care if a college ball player bets on an NBA game? I don't think we should, but some state laws think that's a really big deal, and NCAA thinks it's a big deal, but they geofence you, so they know exactly where you are. So if you're in the facility, it's kind of like these NFL guys, not the ones
Yep.
that bet on their teammates on player props, which is just ridiculous. Can you imagine throwing away an NFL career for like a $250 player prop? That's like
No,
kind of
it's the
amazing. But
gambling companies know a whole lot more about you than maybe you first realize. And
yeah,
this is a generational thing. The kids that are 19 and 20 are much more like their European partners. And I mean, look, if you grow up in Great Britain, dog, you're gambling on stuff from the time you're 12 years old. I mean, it is part of the culture. That is, I'm not sure we've gotten there yet entirely, but we're much closer to that with this younger generation than probably we ever have been from a stateside perspective. So something to watch. My point was there's things that the NCAA can get to immediately. There's things that evidently the NCAA can't get to for a prolonged period of time, and they just drag on. And you internally can make your own decision as to whether or not this is something that has been addressed or has yet to be addressed, and we'll find out more information about it.
see if they can make an appeal to expediency. Something that you should act on with expediency is congruity if you
Right.
run a small business.
Something people are acting on with
Hmm.
consistency. I mean, look, this will never be Shannon sending me 7 emails in a week saying we got 7 additional closings or whatever. But congruity is absolutely starting to cook. Had another 2 or 3 significant businesses reach out to Matt Lewis in the last 2 weeks or so. So we've gotten to that point. It takes a while in podcasting to get there where your audience is fully fluent. And look, congruity's been a great success for a couple years now. So I'm not just, didn't just happen overnight, but it does take a while to fully immerse a message into an audience. And we're just thrilled that Matt Lewis has found a successful avenue to partner with the Nolecast. And we're proud of the relationship that we formed with them. And I'm proud of the damn 4 different entities that I've worked with Congruity on now in some way or some form or fashion. So Matt Lewis is fantastic. CongruityHR.com is the website. Payroll, um, anything that can be done to optimize your business, whether it be HR or payroll. I believe there can be great assets and onboarding. Give Matt Lewis a call or shoot me a DM on social media, and I'd be happy to connect all parties involved. So again, congruityhr.com. Thank you for your support of the Nolecast.
All right. So one other thing I want to find out here, just from talking to teams and other media guys and people who I trust within the league, uh, is bid thieves. And I went with this term because this is kind of an ACC league, right? And there is a chance that FSU loses at Clemson, right? Clemson's probably going to go off, depending on what happens in the LSU game, as somewhere between like a 1 and 4 point favorite. Okay. Which is kind of coin flippy, a very slightly weighted coin, maybe. And it makes sense because the game is in Death Valley. And that's a legitimately a tough place to play. Although we've seen certainly a team that was a small underdog go in there and absolutely drub Clemson 2013 and win by 5 or 6 touchdowns over a very talented football team. If that happens, then your margin for error goes down quite a bit because I think the minimum goal for this year is to make the ACC championship game. If you play at like a top 10, top 12 level after last year being like a top 25 or 30 level power rated team, if you jump into that top 15, top 10 power rating performance, I'm going to be pretty happy with this season. I'm going to see that as a significant step forward. And, I hope that the variance and the bounces go our way. Right. But I do think, like, from the skins on the wall perspective, you kind of want to at least make the ACC title game and get back, and hell, like, hopefully you win at Clemson, and then then you have some margin for error, and then we're talking playoff. If you do lose it, are there any bid thieves that you're really worried about? Like, to me, the two would probably be North Carolina because of Drake May, but I have no idea if their defense will actually be any good. I have serious doubts.
Mm-hmm.
But they did make some staff changes and fire some of the guys who the guys who left their staff 2 years ago privately like trashed like crazy and were like, this defense will never be good if these guys are still on staff. So those guys that were being complained about are now gone. Whether Mac Brown's team can play with any kind of toughness is definitely up for debate after the last couple of years because there's been some softness there, and maybe Drake May has papered over that. The other one, man, we know they have the schedule. Can they actually be good enough to make the easy schedule matter? The question there for me is Louisville, right? Like they have a schedule to where if they play as like a top 25 power rated team, they could go 8-0. Like they could be a legitimate bid thief in this league. But if they're just merely like a top 40, they're probably losing 2 or 3 ACC ball games. So I'm curious to ask Mark Ennis and to ask other guys within the league who we trust, like what have you heard so far? Like, do we really think that they are that level good? Those are kind of the two that I'm watching. And before I get your thoughts, the third one I will mention, and I don't think that they will be this good, but I think you have to mention them because the talent potentially is Miami. And the defensive coordinator Miami hired, the guys I talked to last night who are, in coaching, they kind of all agreed like Miami might have got a stud D coordinator in Gidry. Like they thought he did a really good job. O coordinator, not sold.
Mm-hmm.
D coordinator, they kind of all thought like Gidry's a pretty good get. So, sorry, I'm just texting with you here live on the show. Oh, we text back and forth on the show.
It's a rare occasion. It'll happen sometimes. Yeah, exactly
man.
That position for what it's worth, bud.
So. That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. That's not professional, but 2 guys just confirmed what they were thinking live on air while recording a podcast. So,
I mean, we're kind of like an old married couple. Like I generally do. Oh man! Speaking of which, Maggie just now got a joke that I had to tell her 3 times over Instagram DM. I don't know if you and your wife share like memes back and forth, but yeah, she finally got it, which was great. Did we scream "Wake up" at the start of this AM episode? No,
not yet. Not yet.
We both get up pretty early.
People occasionally probably need to yell that in my ear whenever we do one of these, but hey, that's how it works.
Are you buying into these teams as bid thieves?
That's an interesting conversation. And certainly Louisville has, the most hand-selected of schedules out there that you could have.
We should probably read it off, like for the people that don't have all the schedules memorized.
Yeah. Like North Carolina, I'm not. I've just got to see it, and I just not sure it's there, even with everything they've got on the offensive side of the ball. Louisville, maybe, but Louisville's it's a tough one to get a read on, and tough program to have a ton of confidence in. running through something like that. So
they have Georgia Tech, Boston College, at NC State, at Pitt, Duke, Vatech, Virginia, at Miami.
yeah,
And it is significant to play Miami late because Miami's fans will quit on the program. No doubt about it. And they do every year that the team sucks, which has been a lot recently. Like, they don't show up to big games late. The home field advantage is basically zero. Like, watch Duke waltz in there last year and win in front of 13,000 diehards, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, I would always rather play Miami late, I think, especially because the heat factor too. Like, you don't
Yeah,
really want, if you're a northern team, Louisville's not northern, but they're within the league. They are. You'd want to play them as late as possible, unless Miami's good, and then by that time the bandwagon has built a little bit. I'm not sure they'll be great on offense.
yeah. We
Very.
haven't seen that in quite a long time. So we'll see what good looks like down there.
What could be good within the next 10 days or so. Charles Lester. I know people in the comments are asking about this. Charles Lester, big time corner, just a little bit north of my hometown. Taking the visit to Colorado has people a little bit scared in the comments. Shades of Travis Hunter. Look, I think that Florida State has done a good job recruiting him. I'm willing to wear the egg on my face. I think they're going to get Charles Lester and have for quite a while. I have generally maintained on the show that I'm not worried about DB recruiting relative to other positions. I think obviously FSU has a lot of opportunities for players once they get on campus, and they have a pretty solid coaching staff. And I think some kids do like Pat Surtain a lot. So not super worried about Charles Lester. The Dion thing, I mean, I'll tell you this, right? Like, I talked to Travis at Pac-12, and one of the questions that he got, not for me, but for somebody, was like, "What do people not know about Dion and his approach?" And he said, just his ability to set you up as a businessman and create generational wealth, and like really care about you long term. That pitch certainly resonates with kids, right? But I still feel FSU's in a good spot there. And look, dude, they have done a really good job on KJ Bolden. Now, a lot of schools feel good on KJ Bolden. FSU, Georgia apparently feels pretty good on KJ Bolden. But a year ago, I really could not have seen this happening. Hell, maybe like 6 months ago. And you stay in the fight. The worst case is you recruit the kid to transfer in 2 years if for some reason he doesn't start, right? This is kind of like how the Earl Little thing went down a little bit, except you're much more of a proven program than you were 18 months ago or even 14 months ago. So, yeah, that's kind of the latest on the recruiting. Do I have thoughts on the Northwestern transfer that FSU took? I'm gonna stay positive this morning. I am not going to get into I'm in a good mood. I'm not going to talk about linebacker recruiting right now. I'm going to sorry. I'm going to pass. It's not a Patreon question, so I don't feel like obligated to do it. We love that you guys are in the live chat, but nope, I'm going to stay positive here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a solid pickup. We'll see what happens from there. So,
is it better than guys that you have traction with in this recruiting class?
I mean, just
potentially, yes.
Yeah. The question is,
should you have traction
damning in and of itself? But yeah. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. It's it's an interesting name. Obviously, the one kid that was part of the most recent class that was a Ohio kid with an Ohio State offer that went to Northwestern. You don't see a whole lot of those. I don't think Florida State was ever. Doesn't sound like Florida State was ever particularly involved in that kid, but there was a relationship here, and I think it's a solid pickup. So we'll see what happens at that position.
Agreed. So Florida fans, do we want to do this or do we want to save this?
I think we should save this. This is good. This is a good.
Yeah, I think so too.
A good, interesting conversation that I don't want to hide behind 45 minutes of morning talk. So there's an interesting train of thought about Dan Mullen and Mike Norvell that we'll make sure we get to on the next podcast. I think there's a good conversation there, and also some unique conversation that you're not going to find on a lot of other places.
Game day chose South Carolina against North Carolina.
Interesting choice. I mean, South Carolina's got a little bit of juice behind it in general, but I mean, this is to me about having a kid that may be the number one overall pick next year on as coming out of the gate for ESPN. I mean, it's choosing UNC so you get Drake May, and I don't blame anybody for that train of thought.
It's cheap because the SEC network is there in Charlotte, so that's where that ball game is. So kind of easy to open up the season like that. TCU Colorado is the big noon kickoff game, so that's where big noon kickoff is going to. You won't do FSU LSU because it's a Sunday. Like,
Right.
yes, clearly people I know people have asked us about this. Why would they pick that over that? It's not a choice they made. It's literally College Game Day is a Saturday show. They program around it. That's what they sell against. It's the Saturday show. So doing it from a Sunday location is probably not an option for them. I'm not really sure what other games. They're the primary rights holder for the SEC and the ACC. So when they can hype up those leagues, I think that they do intend to do so. So yeah,
They're making
I'm
their
not up in arms about
decisions,
this.
but I suggest you make yours for the Sunday, and that is LaborDayTailgate.com. Again, LaborDayTailgate.com, pairing with Matt Thompson and his fantastic team at For the Table Restaurant Group, as we have been doing for damn near a decade now. Matt and his folk are a fine group, as you will see, and there's nobody else that I would have confidence to do an event like this. Well, there's others that I would have confidence. There's nobody I would want to do an event like this other than Matt and his team, and very much look forward to meeting as many of our Nolecast listeners as we can. $25 get you a spot right there, literally, within an iron's distance of the stadium. 2 drinks, a koozie. Additional drinks can be purchased at site. Dedicated bathrooms, tents, tables, chairs, DJs. The Battle's Inn will have a little space carved out there that you can probably get some swag from as well. Very much looking forward to this. And again, LaborDayTailgate.com is the website. Big thank you to Matt Thompson and his team. And Bud and I are excited to see as many of you guys on Sunday as possible.
Also, really excited to see you guys at the Tampa Knowles kickoff event, their block party, where we will be the keynote speakers for the VIP section. And all of y'all are VIPs. We know it. You know it. But if you want to get in for VIP admission, you got to use that promo code Nolecast. VIP gets in at 12:15. General admission 2:30. Do you think it might be hot in Tampa on August 12th?
On August the 12th. I think we'll get
If
there.
for nothing else, you want to be in a nice climate-controlled atmosphere during the hottest part of the day, right? Like I think that's worth the price of admission. Anyway, I just dropped it into the live chat. If you guys want to do it, promo code Nolecast. Get a little private Nolecast action from us. Raffle for 2 tickets to LSU FSU. Guys, I think that's worth it right there. I mean, these
ticket on the
are
30s, 35, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Prime ticket.
Open bar, open food. That's going to
be a lot of fun.
That's going to be fun. Are you guys doing anything Saturday night? Okay, do you guys want to hear some hilarious jokes? I've already told you this, so you may laugh twice.
This is the Saturday night of the LSU game in Orlando for a little bit of greater reference as to what we're talking about.
I was talking about the Saturday night of the VIP thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I will talk about both. Will we do something Saturday night in Orlando? I will not, most likely. If I do, it'll be a little earlier in the night because
Bud's totally lame in season and has to do a midnight podcast and sucks. Yeah, it sucks. So somebody that hangs out with Bud on game days is just whatever. Go do your midnight pod, Bud. I'll see you later.
Exactly. I want to push it up all the time. Maybe because I worry that we fight the battle of like my show versus the pillow, right? Mm-hmm. Once you're done watching the primetime game, but that's a different discussion. Do you enjoy annoying your wife?
like thoroughly, very
Yeah,
much so. Yes,
me too.
probably more than I should, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah.
So I think we discussed that. Like I got snipped, right? And you got to wait for the follow up appointment. Um, Guy we know had surprise twins because he didn't wait for the follow up appointment. And a listener, Chris, had sent me a gift certificate to Burns,
Okay.
right, which is a great steakhouse there in the Bay Area. And my follow up appointment is the Monday before the Tampa Knowles quarterback club kickoff. And I was like, oh, perfect. So I made the res actually for that weekend. And I told Mags, I was like, sweetie, are you ready for the Burns and banging weekend? She's like, I'm absolutely not signed up for anything called the Burns and banging weekend. And I had workshopped this and was like, okay, like Burns and blanks. And she's like, no.
She's not signing
She's like,
off on it.
she's like,
That's
this could not be less romantic
she's
than
not leaning into
yeah. So
the situation. Oh,
if you
it's
guys have any other name ideas that I can just annoy her with over the next couple weeks, like I want to keep this train rolling. This is solid. She's in for Burns, but she's not in for the naming rights, and I just think it's maybe it's funnier to me, but uh, if you don't joke around, you know
what is there in life?
what are you doing?
Absolutely. I have
Yeah,
not been to Burns in a long, long time. Actually, I have to say it's been 10 more than 10 years. So no good on me there. And I look forward to
um,
whatever that weekend takes shape, bud, and then whatever the ultimate the ultimate naming that comes down there. So
oh gosh.
um
You want to end on a Patreon question from the professor?
for sure. Yep.
He says, in how many games will FSU face a significant matchup issue due to roster insufficiencies? Well, could be zero.
Yeah.
I mean, the question says will. I, I think it's a more interesting question if you kind of use the word could. And how many games could FSU face a significant matchup issue? Because like there's some unknowables and some things that are like if they play at their ceiling and your group plays more at its floor,
Yeah. What was
that
the exact term? Roster deficiencies?
insufficiencies. Excuse me. I
Insufficient.
must.
So
Um,
I mean, it's not like you're not sufficiently stocked at offensive line. LSU just happens to maybe have two of the better interior players in the so like is that a roster inefficiency or is there something there that's insufficient? I guess that's dependent upon your point of view.
yeah.
Look at
On
if
what
somebody gets
standard?
injured at defensive end, then yeah, we'll be talking about we need another defensive end. That'll be a roster management issue or something like that. But
Right. And
it's
like
tough for me to find one immediately.
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this. You could be like 20 minutes into the LSU game, hypothetically, and you could be like, "Oh," and by the way, great comment from USA Damage. That is fantastic. I like that. You could be 20 minutes into the LSU game and be like, "Oh crap, Mason Smith, who was the number one overall prospect 2 years ago and blew his ACL against you last year, uh, he's dominating Maurice and the guys on the inside." Like that wouldn't that's not an outcome that I expect to happen, but if you told me that would happen, I wouldn't laugh you out of the building. Like it's certainly possible that the guy who has that kind of recruiting pedigree and that kind of twitch at 320 pounds, that he presents a problem for you.
Mm,
Malik Neighbors is, according to some of these early mock drafts, the number 2 receiver off the board. I mean, that suggests that the guy is like a top 15, top 20 pick. I had him as my best receiver in the SEC. Is it impossible that he is just simply a better player than like a Renardo or Fentrell? Yeah, absolutely. Now, hopefully you can hold up against their other receivers and can put more guys on him. Like I would expect you're going to have to devote some attention to a Malik Neighbors, right? Uh, so like, is that a roster insufficiency? That's where I have trouble with the question. I think
mhm.
you've done a great job building up the offensive line. I think going out and getting Fentrell Cypress was absolutely a great move that you had to get. right? Based on all the information you could possibly gather. To me, that's just you're going up against some real studs, right? Like, I mean, oh, okay, so you're struggling against a guy whose ceiling is top half of the first round. All right, you know who else will? Pretty much everybody else in the country. Like,
Mhm.
who on LSU's schedule is not worried about Malik Neighbors? I think it's probably just one team, and even still, like Bama putting Kool-Aid on him, you know,
Mhm.
and then still, like they're probably going to help him out some, right? I don't look at that as like a roster insufficiency, honestly. Like I mean, are we being homers here?
If there's some massive area that is insufficient on this roster, we haven't found it, and we'll need the benefit of retrospect, looking back and seeing what it was. Like I said, you could have an injury here or there. You could.
Oh, he sent an example. He said like Clemson's running backs against your linebackers in the pass game.
Mhm.
Okay, but still, like we know the baseline level of play for the
Yeah,
linebackers is quality play. Not amazing, but quality, you know, upper half of the conference play from your linebackers.
yeah, and pass.
That's
That's one of their strengths, actually. I mean, if you want to be super focused about it. I mean, do you get into a playoff game with a 240-pound back that can be run at you 22 times and you don't have I mean that's
right.
more a concern is that you don't.
Like a Mayan Williams at Ohio State or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe he ends up being like that guy. Uh,
But
yeah,
again, I mean that guy doesn't really exist in college football anymore. So I can't be
right,
like, hey, you're not ready to stop the back that most people left behind 10 or 15 years ago, as far as the Big Ten back that gets 26 carries a game and it is 230 pounds. And yeah, it's just a man. Did you no, this is going long and we'll wrap here shortly, but did you see those
I got 90
figures
minutes.
about what was it about salary growth over the last NFLPA, and the three that lagged were punter, kicker, and running back? I mean, if that's
And
just not reflective of what's happened with this sport, I have a hard time. What's happened to running back and to a lesser extent linebacker are hard for me as somebody that's in their late 30s to make sense of based off the sport that I grew up with. It's wild. It's true. Uh, Very interesting though.
it's it's reflective of some changes in the game. Um, the RPO stuff has really hurt the linebacker position's impact because
Hmm.
they can sort of be schemed out of the game in some systems, right? And the type of guy who is getting paid in the NFL now at linebacker is a real freak athlete. You know, like Marvin Jones would get paid in a year, right? But it's like, can you be that disruptive of a force, and can you also like carry verticals,
Right.
which is something a lot of backers can't do. Like Fred Warner for San Fran. Okay, like you know what? That's a guy that if he has to take a really athletic tight end or sometimes a slot and carry him up the seam 20 yards, can do so. Um, I know Sinone had a really good clip on Twitter the other day of Telvin Smith running with Stephon Diggs,
Hmm.
who is an All Pro on the 2013 team. Um, so on that for sure, and running back, I do think that these teams are finding that like these guys break down really fast. They take a pounding. It's better to have two or three, keep them fresh, and also a lot of it's just they kind of get what you block for them.
Yeah.
And some like Adrian Peterson in his prime gets you more, but yeah.
No, I
Uh,
mean we've literally
oh,
seen the position turned into like a disposable razor. I mean, it's just
yeah.
crazy. It's wild. Oh.
Did you see the did you see the Miami fan trying to argue that Duke Johnson was better than Dalvin Cook?
I was like, we're not really gonna say Dalvin here.
Dude,
That's
yes.
funny. That's funny.
It's like, oh,
Yeah, Duke Johnson.
interesting. In
Okay.
what? Pop Warner?
Yeah. Yeah. When they were
Yeah,
eight.
Duke Johnson. Like,
Uh,
hmm.
I mean, when they were freshmen, Dalvin was a little bit of a late merger there, but that's fun. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he came out with like a ton of stats, and I was like, so you Googled these, I assume. You can't like Google like any game film and just use your eyes for like half a second, bro, and take a look at this. So yeah, that was interesting. I am seeing this. The one position that is coming up now in the NFL most recently, like just year over year, is D tackle.
Hmm.
So many teams want to play this too high, like they want to live in too high, deny the big play. Something will go wrong with the drive, penalty,
Hmm.
whatever, tackle for loss. But if you're playing that, you're playing a man down in the box. And so having a big D tackle who can really make an impact for you and take, what's up, Mike? Of course. Good morning. My God, Mike is always here for us, man. And by the way, a couple people asking about the Daryl Jackson waiver. We did that about 30 or 20 minutes ago. So just kind of scroll back in the thing. Yeah, can't Google draft order. Exactly. But the D tackle position, because you're playing so much too high, to have a guy who is legitimately a problem and can two gap is much, I guess, is more valuable relative to where he was 2-3 years ago, or at least is being recognized
Hmm.
as more valuable. And I do think that is kind of the case in college too, somewhat. Like a really good D tackle is extremely valuable.
Hmm.
Um, as you're trying to deny explosive plays. Anything else from the chat here? Do you think FSU could be the number one offense in the country? Question says could, not will, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's could, yes,
Could
indeed.
is very much in play. I do believe that.
Yeah, will, we'll see. Georgia, apparently, like the rumor at ACC Media Days is that Georgia's offense carved their defense in spring scrimmages. So if that's the case, I'm probably going Georgia.
I
Just
mean,
preseason question.
gonna be damn good. They've got an absurd. I mean, well, Georgia's talented everywhere, but they've got a ton of good running backs. They have maybe the best tight end of the past 10 years, and I don't think they're going to lose a whole lot of quarterback. So that'll be fun to see.
Yeah, probably 4 drafted players on the O-line starting. They got Dominic Lovett, who was the first team All SEC guy last year at receiver from Missouri, to come over. Yeah, they're probably. By the way, you can't vote for Dominic Lovett to be on the preseason All ACC team or All SEC team. Georgia didn't nominate him. I'm like, bro, I get not putting Carson Beck on the nominations list because, you know, you don't want to. You're trying to promote a quarterback competition still, whatever. I get it. This guy was actually a first team on the end of the season team last year, and you didn't put him on. But they got Ladd McConkey on.
They got Ladd. Absolutely. They got Ladd. Yeah.
He was a good player. I mean,
He's a little bit of a cult hero around here. Yeah.
Oh,
cool,
God.
Man. All right. Well, this has been another good summer episode of the Nolecast. We are getting very close to our positional preview series and all of the other pieces of content that are indicative as to where we are. But I'm excited to let you get over there to ACC Media Days. Shoot me a text, please, if anything wild comes of the 9 o'clock get together. I will be watching that, though. You don't have to text me. This is one of the few commissioner comments that's ever been kind of appointment TV for me. I don't think there's going to be anything wild that comes out of it, but I do look forward to seeing what Phillips has to say, and we can comment on another ACC Media Day pass by on the next episode and be all the closer to having actual football in front of us.
And who knows, man? Maybe this is our last ACC Media Day ever. Don't think so, but I guess we'll have to see.
All right, y'all. Till next time, this has been a Nolecast. Thanks again. Talk to you in the next 5 days or so. Till then.